Vladimir Zelensky proposes a full detainee exchange with Russia as the starting point for peace. Friedrich Merz vows to form an action-ready government after the German election win. And the Arab Parliament will hold an emergency session on Palestine. It's 4 p.m. local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Russia and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has proposed the full detainee exchange with Russia as a starting point to end the conflict in Ukraine. Speaking at a summit in Kyiv marking the third anniversary of Russia's conflict with Ukraine, Zelensky stated that Russia must release Ukrainians, adding that Ukraine is ready for an exchange of all detainees, which is a fair starting point as per his description. Ukrainian President Zelensky has stated that he believed US President Donald Trump's team viewed the ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia as a resolution of the conflict. Speaking at a press conference, he said, "My deal struck between the United States and Russia to end the conflict in Ukraine would not be successful if Ukraine did not agree to its conditions." Kyiv has stressed the need for a long-term resolution to the conflict. Zelensky also said that Ukraine was working on domestic alternatives to the United States-produced Patriot air defense system. The Kremlin has welcomed and supported what it described as a new U.S. approach to dialogue with Russia, which it contrasted to that of Europe. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov was responding to a question about comments made last week by U.S. President Donald Trump, who criticized Ukrainian President Zelensky and suggested that Kyiv has initiated the conflict. Peskov stated that Moscow hoped Washington would thoroughly analyze the root causes of the Ukrainian conflict, which he emphasized was essential for achieving a resolution. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan stated that Turkey supports all initiatives aimed at resolving the Ukrainian crisis, highlighting its special interest in the U.S. initiative. Speaking alongside Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Hakan Fidan emphasized Turkey's diplomatic efforts to achieve a resolution and expressed its readiness to support negotiations. He also stressed the significance of ensuring safe navigation in the Black Sea, resolving the Syrian conflict, and securing a lasting solution for Gaza, advocating for unity and diplomacy as essential tools to address these challenges.
Daha önce olduğu gibi görüşmelere ev sahipliği yapmaya da hazırız. Ayrıca
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that Russia and Turkey share strong alignment in various areas, especially in energy and industry. During a press conference with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Ankara, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasized the strength of their cooperation despite international tensions. He addressed a range of topics, including joint strategic projects, collaboration in the energy sector, the situation in Ukraine, and Russia's stance on the crisis, while reaffirming the commitment to Palestinian statehood. Ukrainian's parliament has fallen short of the 226 votes needed to pass a resolution supporting holding elections after the conflict with Russia ends, with only 218 MPs supporting it. The resolution presented and a number of Ukrainian MPs emphasized that presidential elections would take place only after achieving a comprehensive peace. It also warned that holding elections under martial law would undermine democratic principles, likening it to Russia's 2024 election process, which was described by Ukrainian legislators as controversial. EU foreign ministers have approved the 16th package of sanctions against Russia. The new sanctions include a ban on primary aluminium imports, selling games consoles, and listing 73 ships from Russia's shadow fleet. This comes as Moscow claimed these sanctions won't impact its economy but harm the West, as Russia is self-sufficient in energy and industry. Russia also stated that West lacks the courage to acknowledge the failure of its sanctions. Russia has stated it does not see any grounds to renew dialogue with Europe for now. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov made the statement just hours after the European Union approved its 16th package of sanctions against Russia over the conflict in Ukraine. The latest sanctions package includes the ban on primary aluminium, restrictions on sale of game consoles, and the designation of honors of operators of 74 so-called shadow fleet vessels used to evade sanctions. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has pledged the new €3.5 billion aid package to Ukraine expected in March. In a press conference in Kyiv, she reiterated Europe's continued support for Ukraine, emphasizing the importance of assistance during critical times. This new aid is part of a larger program amounting to €50 billion until 2027, provided as a loan with a prepayment term until 2042. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has urged support for Ukraine. Kaja Kallas stated that Ukraine needs its support more than ever. She added that anyone can discuss whatever they want with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but when it comes to matters involving Europe or Ukraine, both Ukraine and Europe must agree to any deal.
Gaming consoles to shadow fleet, the different aspects, and then we have also put forward.
The British Prime Minister has expressed his country's readiness to send troops to Ukraine. The statement underscores the UK's continued support for Ukraine amid its ongoing conflict with Russia. Although no specific timelines were provided, the expressed willingness to deploy troops demonstrates the United Kingdom's strong commitment to aiding Ukraine. This initiative aligns with broader Western efforts to provide both military and political support to Ukraine. Russia, Ukraine, and the United States remain at odds, with U.S. actions raising concerns over Ukraine's future sovereignty.
As the Russia-Ukraine conflict enters its fourth year, tensions remain high, with no immediate resolution in sight, despite calls for peace. Officials from Russia, Ukraine, and the United States continue to present conflicting narratives on how to end the conflict. Russian officials insist that any resolution must recognize Moscow's territorial claims, including annexed regions like Crimea and several oblasts in eastern and southern Ukraine. A Kremlin spokesperson stated that while Russia is open to dialogue, Ukraine must accept new realities on the ground. Ukraine's leadership reaffirmed its commitment to restoring its full sovereignty, stating that peace cannot come at the expense of its independence or borders. Zelensky has expressed outrage over Washington's apparent repositioning with regards to his country and flatly rejected U.S. propositions, causing unprecedented tensions in Ukraine-U.S. relations. The U.S., however, seemingly did not heed Ukraine's call, holding unilateral talks with Russia in Riyadh, excluding Ukraine and its European partners, raising fears that the Trump administration may be open to a hasty settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, favorable to Russia's terms. U.S. President Trump went further, trying to force Kyiv to sign a deal granting the U.S. exclusive rights to exploit Ukraine's rare earth minerals in exchange for future aid. This raises questions on whether Ukraine can survive the conflict with Russia if they lose U.S. military and economic support. Moscow, on the other hand, looks forward to normalizing relations with Washington, while aiming to negotiate a comprehensive deal with the U.S.
For more analysis, we now move on to Riham Morsi in our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you, Rana. And to help us analyze the current situation, we're joined from Moscow by the Russian affairs expert, Ammar Qana. Welcome to Qnews and thank you for joining us, sir. Sir, firstly, let's start off by the proposal that Zelensky had talked about, do you believe that the detainee exchange proposed by Zelensky could serve as a realistic starting point for peace, or is this something that is a hindrance towards peace?
Greetings to you and to the viewers. We have seen today that there are a lot of tensions regarding and confusion regarding of Zelensky's statements, who is not legitimate anymore. He's not very strong in the today's equation, the international equation, and the geopolitical conflict between Russia and the Western system that is witnessing a lot of contradictions and tensions to a very high level. We listen every day contradicting different statements by Zelensky, and there is no way to depend on any proposals from Kiev today. We have seen a very strong path to talk about and what is happening between Moscow and Washington currently regarding the Ukrainian crisis. There is a U.S. plan, as has been announced in the media. It is not clear so far. We do not know the items, but the situation in Moscow is much more clearer because the regions controlled by Russia are not negotiation cards. The principle of a trade-off between Ukraine and Russia are not possible anymore, especially for the Kremlin. But we have a new reality, a new geopolitical military reality that will impose a de facto, and the next equation will be formed by the understanding of the Trump new administration to the current situation. We have seen him blackmail Ukraine and Zelensky through what is called the mineral treaty agreement in Ukraine.
So, sir, you're trying to say that Zelensky basically has a very few cards to play when it comes to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Given the negotiations that took place in Riyadh between the US and Russia that didn't involve Ukraine, how do you see the future when it comes to the peace talks, and what does this mean for Ukraine?
Zelensky does not have any cards to negotiate today. Talking directly to reach a settlement or a logical dialogue is now very clear between Moscow and Washington. We see today a lot of confusion in the European system, especially that the US proposal is not proportionate with the European situation that is so far committing to supporting Ukraine military-wise and economy-wise. And we have seen a new pack of sanctions today imposed on Russia. and the European Commission pledged $3 billion euros to Ukraine as military support. There is a lot of contradiction between within the Western system between the United States and the European Union. In my opinion, now or later, Europe will have to follow the U.S. decision, because Europe, since the beginning of this crisis, lost a lot, and they lost also their geopolitical edge. And Europe alone cannot support Ukraine with the military equipment to prolong the crisis. So they have to use the Macron visit today to Washington in an attempt to convince Trump to not negotiate with Russia. And I think this is part of the political bankruptcy of Europe, when we see that the cost of this war is now very expensive to all the parties involved, especially the European economies.
Okay, so sir, now Turkey is also trying or attempting to be in a mediator role. They met, or the Turkish foreign minister met with his Russian counterpart, and there's plans for also with the Ukrainians as well. What kind of role do you see Turkey playing when it comes to mediating between the two parties?
In my opinion, this mediation cannot be described as mediation, but Turkey is working as a platform for dialogue. That's what happened in Istanbul as well. Turkey is not even a member of NATO. So far, it is supporting the Ukrainian stance, and there is a political and military relations between Turkey and Ukraine. The relations between Turkey and Russia are good, but are not up to the level of Turkey being the mediator between the two parties. And I repeat here, mediation here is or the dialogue or negotiation between Washington and Moscow.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your insights, joining us from Moscow. That was the Russian affairs expert, Qnews. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. And now back to you, Rana, in the studio.
Thank you so much, Riham. And now the Kremlin has announced that Russia is urging France to enhance security measures following explosions at the Russian consulate in Marseille, which Moscow described as resembling an act of terrorism. 3 projectiles were thrown at the perimeter wall of Russia's consulate in the southern French port city of Marseille, 2 of which exploded. Russia demanded a full French investigation and said the incident looked like an act of terrorism. And now we move on to the latest developments in Germany.
Transaktional.
Friedrich Merz, the winner of the German election, has stated that he will do everything in his power to swiftly form a government capable of taking decisive action. Merz emphasized the need to quickly restore their ability to act, enabling them to address domestic challenges effectively and reassert their presence in Europe. According to the polling institute Infratest, Merz's Conservative Party secured just under 30% of the vote. The Kremlin has stated that it vowed it would need to wait and observe how relations between Russia and any new German government develop. The criminal stated that with each new government, it hopes for a new, pragmatic approach to reality and to potential areas of mutual interest between Russia and Germany. Friedrich Merz, 69, is poised to become Germany's next chancellor after his CDU-CSU bloc secured first place in the election. Meanwhile, the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD, achieved a historic second-place finish following the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-party coalition. Moving on to Egypt, where the Arab Parliament will hold an emergency session on Palestine under the theme "Rebuilding Gaza is a Duty, Expelling its People is a Crime" on February the 26th at the headquarters of the Arab League General Secretariat in Cairo. In a statement, the Arab Parliament announced that the emergency session on Palestine will be preceded by a meeting of the Palestinian Committee, which will discuss the latest developments in the Palestinian territory. The Palestinian Prisoners Society has reported that acts of repression have notably escalated in the Israeli Offer prison. PPS revealed some details of the repression measures based on testimonies obtained by the PPS lawyers in recent weeks. The report indicated that the repression measures resulting in varying degrees of injury among the prisoners after heavily armed occupation forces stormed several sections of the prison using police dogs, grenades and brutal physical assaults. Human Rights Watch has said the European Union should unequivocally condemn Israel's atrocity crimes and other serious violations of international law. It said it should make clear to Israeli Foreign Minister that there will be any consequences for past and ongoing abuses, including sanctions on officials responsible for ongoing abuses and suspending weapons sales. That brings us to the end of today's news bulletin. Here is what we have been covering. Vladimir Zelensky proposes full detainee exchange with Russia as a starting point for peace. Friedrich Merz vows to form an action-ready government after the German election win. And the Arab Parliament will hold an emergency session on Palestine. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more coming up here on Qnews.